Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to My Spouse is My Best Friend. I'm your co host, Nicole.
And I'm Dr. Jason Green.
And tonight we want to talk about mental health struggles and how that impacts your marriage. And tonight we have two guests to join us. We have Dr. T. Day Jackson Shaw and Mrs. Marcine Kinley, both with intentional hearts, care, compassion, counseling and consulting. I'm gonna get that right for the rest of the night, okay, ladies?
All right.
They're kind
Tell
of
us
trying
about
to figure out
tell us about your ministry.
what they're going.
About intentional hearts
Yeah.
and stuff. So, yes. I'll talk about the event. You can talk about
Okay. Intentional Hearts Counseling Consulting is our baby. We stepped out on faith 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, from a local school district. I was a director in a school district, and our ministry is to help others be their best self. Our motto is "Leave your heart in our hands so you can face tomorrow." And so our whole goal is healing, growth, and change. We are addiction therapists, and we love what we do. We just want to take what we were doing in the school district on a broader scale and just help people live their best lives. So my motto is, "You are your best accessory." I believe you have everything within you to be your best self, right? And you are all you need to be your best self. So that's my motto.
my motto is hold on to hope. I believe if you can hold on to hope with nothing else, if you have nothing else but hope, there's still a chance. And as a counselor, I feel like my job is to hold hope for you until you can hold it for yourself. And so we're, like she said, we're addiction therapists, but we're also empowerment coaches. And so we work with a lot of people who have like imposter syndrome, high achieving students, and all the stresses that come with
difficulty
that.
loving themselves.
So we wanted to talk about mental health awareness in the context of marriage. So just a couple of questions for you all. So what are the most common mental health issues that shows up in marriages?
What shows up in marriages is what shows up in the community at large.
Right. And I think it's issues that show up in marriage that trigger or contribute to mental health issues, right? So if there's trust issues and different things like that, it can increase anxiety, depression, a lot of things that individual people struggle with, and then they bring to the marriage as well.
So normally, you're saying that it's an existing condition that comes into the marriage.
Right.
Probably something you should talk about before, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we talk about finances, child rearing, all those things. Also talk about mental health.
Where are you at mentally? Because I don't think we talk about that when we come into marriage. We talk about in our other sessions about talking about finances, talking about kids, talking about bringing baggage into our marriages, but we don't talk about mental health or where you are at mentally or emotionally. So that's just kind of why we wanted to have this session, because it's very important to be mentally sound and know where your partner is in that space.
And that comes with communication. Yep. So the healthier your communication, the healthier your emotional health together as a couple.
Absolutely.
And if you have a spouse that is dealing with one of those issues, how do you distinguish between maybe this person's having a rough patch or maybe they're going through one of their emotions?
I think it depends on how consistent it is. How, is it lasting a long time? Is it triggered by specific things that are happening? Or if this is truly a chemical imbalance that this person has, there may not be specific precipitators or triggers. It's just something that happens with this young person, and then you need to be able to identify that.
And if there's already a diagnosis, just ask. Do we need to schedule an appointment? Have you talked to your counselor? Those kinds of things. And if there's not already a diagnosis, say, hey, I think we should go talk to somebody about this.
Yeah. And I think if you have that communication and you've established at the very beginning that there is a mental issue, now remember that in your marriage, you're the death part, remember? And that you have to sign up for that. So make sure that you're supporting your partner through those mental issues, and like I said, identifying the triggers, asking, hey, do we need to go out and go see a counselor or anything like that, but support your partner in that.
I think you have to be a safe place for your partner too.
Absolutely.
Someone who is
Yes.
struggling
Oh my God.
with mental health issues, someone who's struggling emotionally, if their partner is not a safe place to land, then it's going to be very difficult for them to even open up about that, or for the other partner to even get them to communicate. And then that's when you see the things will begin to snowball and create bigger and bigger problems.
So I'm glad you said that, because I know that we have talked to couples in the past that felt it having a difficult conversation with their spouse regarding the feelings, things that they're going through, because it's a stigma, especially in our community. Do you guys come across that?
I
sure.
want to speak from my personal experience. When I was dating my husband, we talked about the rules of engagement for arguing. And we set up guidelines. So like I told him, hey, when I get upset, I'm vicious with my words. And I attack. I attack with my words, and I attack to hurt. So if we get into an argument and I leave, do not come after me. And he said, okay, but you have to text me where you are or where you're going. I won't come after you, but I need to know where you are for safety reasons.
Right.
Okay. So when we had our first argument, we followed the rules of engagement.
Right.
And it helped with me being a person who can escalate. It helped. I didn't escalate to the point that I normally escalate, which means I was calm enough to send that text message. And because he knew that I was sending one, he didn't follow me, which can escalate the situation even more. And so just having those rules, having those conversations before they happen, for one, before the situation comes up, for one, and before you say I do.
Yeah, I think we get caught up in nostalgia, right? Sometimes. And even we know that we see the mental state, we see the we see the red flags.
Right.
We ignore them and don't talk about them, and then when we get in the marriage, you want to cut bait.
Exactly. And you need to know how your spouse handles fear, how they handle hurt, how they handle pain, right? Because if you wait and it manifests itself in such a destructive way, you haven't had those conversations or whatever, you don't know what to expect, then it could destroy your marriage.
The trauma responses is fight, flight, freeze, appease, and I'm losing one right now. But having those conversations, what do you do when you get angry? What does it look like?
Right.
What is your defense mechanism?
Right.
And so, and when it comes to when you were asking before, like, how do you know if it's a rough patch or something more? Because we've already had these conversations. Oh, you know what? They went a little higher than
normal,
or they went a little lower. It went beyond what's normal for them.
Well, what about a person that they're in the dating stage or they're in that honeymoon stage? What would you recommend that they would say or do to not come across as their therapist? So we hear sometimes couples say, she's trying to be my mama. She's trying to be my boss. She's trying to. So how do you come across to the person? I'm coming to you lovingly because I care about you. I'm not trying to be your therapist, but we might need to talk to somebody.
I mean, it's hard to tell somebody you're crazy.
Yeah.
Right? You crazy, dude. You got an imbalance. I mean, how do you say that?
Right.
And
I think it's the word you use. I think it's the words that you use, right? If I say you sound crazy or you crazy, you're going to shut that person down. So it goes back to, are you a safe space? If you are a safe landing spot, a soft spot for someone who is struggling emotionally, then, it makes all the difference in the world, right? And then you can have those conversations without, being a therapist or making them judging them. A lot of people struggling with mental health issues feel judged. They feel misunderstood. So you just have to be that person that understands them, that doesn't judge them, that's safe place for them to be who they are.
And we teach people to say what they notice.
Okay.
So I love you, whatever. I noticed that you seem to be more tired than normal. I noticed that you're sleeping. I'll give
more than usual.
I'll give my own personal example. When I was going through my depression the first time, my husband said, "Hey, I noticed you haven't taken a bath. Are you depressed?" That's literally what he said to me.
Wow.
And I said, now that you say that, yeah, I think I am. And it was he noticed. And he told me what he knows. You stink. That would have like what that's a whole different conversation. But he knows I wasn't taking a bath. He knows that that's a sign of that could be a possible one of the main signs of someone being in depression. Hey, I noticed you aren't doing this. Do you think this?
And when somebody's struggling emotionally, they don't feel seen. So if I say, I noticed you really been sad lately, they feel seen, and just feeling seen will make them open up.
That's good. Yeah.
And it takes away that judgment piece.
Right.
And so if I'm saying what I see and what I hear, it takes away that judgment. I'm just making an observation.
And you're coming from a loving spot.
Yep.
Saying,
Exactly.
hey, I care about you and I just want you to be happy. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good response.
Yeah. So my question again, for those that supporting their spouses, what do you think they need to do from a self-care perspective, getting themselves together, making sure that they are not going down a codependent or collapsed relationship? What would you advise?
I think the best thing you can do is educate yourself, right? If I know that my spouse suffers with depression, I'm going to learn as much about depression as I can, because you will also learn about codependency and how to best help them without being sick yourself. Because that is common with couples, right? Even with parents, with children that have mental health diagnosis, they become sick with their loved one. And so you need to educate yourself. And then you need to have healthy discussions at times where the illness is not prominent and active. I mean, I don't know what to say active, but you know what I mean? When they are doing well.
Focus.
Right. It is not the focus. Have healthy conversations at the off times. Because a lot of times we wait and then somebody's plummeted and they're feeling very sick emotionally. And then we're having these conversations and it's so much harder to have. Or you're angry, you're frustrated, all of that.
So we talk about being flipped out, flipping your lid. Yeah, you can Google it. But basically, like the frontal part of your brain is the critical thinking, processing part of the brain. And then within the brain, you have your emotional center. And what happens when we're triggered by stress or whatever, our brain literally disconnects itself. So you flip your lid and the frontal lobe is no longer communicating with the emotional center and the emotional center is taking control. And so when we're trying to have these conversations in the moment, it's
when your lid is flipped,
trying to communicate, and that's never going to end well. And so somebody, at least one of the people, have to come back and come back to our whole brain
when they're not heightened.
So that leads me to my next question. What if both spouses are dealing with mental health issues?
First of all, even I always recommend the spouse who doesn't have a mental health need to still go to counseling. Counseling is not just for counseling is for wellness, just general wellness.
Maintain wellness.
There's a stigma in our community about counseling or going to a shrink or anything like that. And forget it's called mental health for a reason, y'all. You got to be mentally healthy in your marriage when you're going through it, because you're going to have your ups and downs, your roller coasters, and you got to know how to handle those things. You can't do it on your own. First of all, you got to be on your knees. What I mean by prayer, and you got to be in touch with Jesus. And make sure that he's the head, because he's the ultimate doctor in this. But he uses people and tools, and he puts those in place so that we can manage those things.
I mean, I think when we talk about taking care of your temple, people only look at it as physical, right? Take care of your temple. Your wellness includes your spiritual health, your physical health, and your emotional health. And so I think oftentimes we do all the preventative care and interventions for our physical health, but we don't look at the same way for our mental health. So again, if both of you are struggling, making sure you put those preventative pieces in place to deal with your mental health and go to counseling.
And also know what a healthy relationship looks like. Because sometimes people don't notice that there's a mental health need, because for them it's normal relationship, it's normal communication. It's when it's really an unhealthy relationship, it's unhealthy. And so sometimes people don't know because they don't have an example of what is healthy and how things can be. I won't say should be, but how things can be. And so,
And counseling will help that.
right.
And so typically when someone calls you all, do you meet with just a person, or is there a chance to meet with that person and their spouse, or how do you all look at that?
It just depends on why they're coming to counseling, what the issues are. Sometimes they don't know that their spouse or another family member needs to meet with them too. We determine that, oh, this is a situation where we really need to meet with other people, and your spouse. But just depending on why they come to us initially determines who we meet with. Sometimes it feels safe, the initial meeting, to be just them if they figure I'm the one with the problem. Or their spouse sent them because they have the problem and they don't want to be a part of that. And I feel like as a counselor, I'll appease that in the beginning, and then I'll get real and raw that this is just not an individual issue, right?
Right. And because we work from a systemic kind of standpoint, we love to incorporate a loved one, whether that's a spouse, partner, or friend. But I always say we're not meant to do this thing called life alone.
No.
And so at some point we want to incorporate a community base.
Right.
To the
a family
sessions.
systems approach. I always kind of liken it like you take this puzzle piece out and you mold it and make it better, and then you try to put it back in. None of the other puzzle pieces have received any counseling or done any molding or anything. It's not going to fit anymore, right? And so they're still going to end back up in the same place. So everybody in that household needs care and help.
So it's a process, because we have couples to come with us and it's like 1 or 2 sessions, and it's like, you didn't fix us.
Yep.
Right. Do you guys encounter that?
So my
and we don't. Well, first of all, we don't fix anybody.
My standard statement says, "I am not. You are not. You are not a. You are not a robot, and I am not a mechanic.
Right. We don't have a magic wand. You didn't come here for fixing.
We get a lot.
Yeah. I don't fix and I don't magic.
We help you through a process of growth and change and healing. That's what that is. And I always change those words when they come to you, like, was 3 sessions going to be enough to fix me, or 3 sessions going to be enough, and I don't know what you need for your growth and healing, or the work you're going to put into it, because really counseling is about what you put into it. The work that you do, so
we're
people come to us, really, we just providing guidance.
Yes, we just do the guide.
Yeah, that's one of the first conversations we have when people come over. I ask them straight up, are you serious? Do you love your husband? Do you love your wife? Do you want to be in this marriage? Because don't waste my time. Right. Because I can't fix you. But this is going to be a long process. I'll tell them, one of y'all going to get angry, one of y'all going to storm out. Right. One of y'all going to come back in, one of y'all going to say, we still have this issue. But I need to know that y'all are in it to really. Do you want to get better? And I always say it's going to get worse before it gets better. Absolutely. When you dig emotionally and you're trying to stretch yourself to grow and change emotionally, it will get harder before it gets better. And that's why people about the 3rd or 4th session drop out of counseling, because that's when you dig in deep. Yeah. 3rd or 4th session, they running out the door and being mad.
And what does better look like? Because they can have this unrealistic view of better
and normal.
And normal. I don't even like to use the word normal.
Yep, I don't either.
And so what does better look like for you? What does changed look like for you? Yeah. Okay. And I'm a very practical kind of person when it comes to certain things. So okay, what is better? Okay, that's okay. So what do we need to do to get to better? What are you willing to do to get to there? We're step 0. How do we get to step 0.5? I don't even want to start with step 1. Just 0.5.
Baby steps.
Right. And so when
don't define your better by somebody else's
standards. Right.
And even your marriage, better for y'all's marriage or growth is very different from the next person's, right? Absolutely. So even your spouses, I tell people, don't even define your growth by your spouse's growth. They need something different, and then y'all bring that together. So.
Well, I think, I see, different types of relationships here. When we talk about mental health, we're talking about, at the very beginning that y'all are dating, and one of y'all have mental health and whatnot, and you make a decision whether you're going to deal with that and talk about it and communicate. And then if you decide to get married, know that you need to be there to support them You need to be there and make them feel seen when those things, and notice when something's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to where you're in a marriage and you figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That your wife is a little, or your husband is a little off. How to approach that, right? And how to approach that is having that conversation and saying, "Hey, babe, I noticed you're not taking a bath, so is something wrong? Or I've noticed that you're changing your routine, or you're always in bed." And coming in at a loving perspective, right? And then I don't know what is another one, but those are really the two types.
And you mentioned earlier, somebody mentioned about red flags and not ignoring them.
Oh yeah.
Call a thing a thing. It's how having boundaries is not selfish.
Right.
And so have those boundaries. Hey, that's a red flag. I've literally said this to somebody. Hey, that's a red flag. You got 2 more and I'm out. So I set a boundary in the beginning instead of, I noticed, but he's just or she's no.
Well, when you talk about self-care, part of self-care is establishing boundaries for yourself as well.
So because if we're living in this fantasy, because that's really what it is when you ignore them, then going back to how do you recognize and all that, I can't recognize if I'm not willing to admit. And so I can't recognize or I might recognize, but I don't know how to approach because I've said it's okay since day one.
Well, you actually step into enabling at that point as well.
Yes,
you can
enabling codependency
and become codependent, but enable and really, you can harm out of
what it's perceived
what
as
you
love.
Perceive to be love. But ignoring and enabling can harm your partner's mental health.
You can love your partner to death.
So doing more damage.
Love your partner to death.
And I just want to reiterate that, when you're in a marriage and you do discover these things, don't just cut bait. I mean, if you love your wife and you stood against the altar of God and said, "I do," and that you're becoming one flesh, pray about it first of all, and second of all, support your wife through it. I mean, if you sat there, you did everything that you to get her or get him. I mean, really invest, and then notice those things and commit. And so I urge everybody that are in that situation, are already in a marriage and figured out something's wrong, to help your wife, help your husband, support them in those areas. Or even say, "Hey, let's go to counseling," or "I've noticed this," or whatnot. But first of all, I mean, God's not going to put you in that situation, or put you in that marriage that's meant to be and it to fail. I mean, it's going to be work. But if you do what he puts ahead of you, and you put him first, and you pray about it, and you do the things, you take the step, you're both equally yoked and whatnot, it's going to work out for good because it's for a reason, right? So, I thank y'all for coming out. I mean, you really enlightened me in some things too.
So again, thank you so much for joining. Any last words for our viewers?
Or May is also Mother's Day and all that. And so we're hosting an event called Mommy and Mental Health on May 31st at Eugene McCrae Community Center. If you go to our website, www.intentional, not international, intentional hearts.
Intentional.
Autocorrect will correct it to international. But intentionalheartscc.com. And there's a banner at the top of the homepage that will take you to register for the event. The event is completely free, but you have to register so we know we have enough of everything. And it's specifically for mothers of all ages and stages. So grandmothers, mothers, auntie mothers, teenage
expectant
mothers,
empty nesters.
Yes, mothers of all ages and stages are welcome to come out.
We want to celebrate you.
Awesome.
So we'll definitely put your website and contact information and event information in our comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we thank you for coming, my baby. This is my baby sister, y'all. We thank y'all for coming. And,
thank you.
Again, remember Mental Health Month. I mean, take care of your health, y'all. Make sure you click and subscribe. Visit My Spouse, My Best Friend. Anything to say?
That's it.
All right. Love y'all.
Bye.
Bye.